Throughout human history, there have been some truly horrific and inhumane punishments inflicted upon individuals who have broken the law or been deemed to have committed some kind of wrongdoing. These punishments often reflected the values and beliefs of the society in which they were carried out and were designed to inflict maximum pain and suffering upon the person being punished. In this video, we will explore some of the worst punishments in human history. Let's get started. Number 10. The breaking wheel. Europeans used to love public executions, where killers, thieves, and other types of criminals were put to death. But for the most hated, the broken wheel was a more horrible end. The doomed people were tied down on a stage, and when the wheel hit them, it broke their legs. That's not always the end of it. After limbs were broken, the victim was generally tied to the wheel with limbs stuck through its holes. As they stood on a pole, they knew they would die by being burned, hung, or beheaded. But living meant a rare chance at forgiveness, as if God had saved them. Few people have lived through one of history's worst trials, and those who did were remembered as some of the worst people ever. Number 9. Chinese water torture. This was one of the most well-known methods of torture. It appeared in a Mythbusters episode, and other places. It starts with the victim lying down, hands, feet, and head securely fastened. They're often in darkness, or blindfolded for sensory deprivation. Above their forehead hangs a bucket of icy water with a small hole. Water drips irregularly, causing escalating discomfort. While it's mostly known for its psychological toll, the physical effects are severe too. The constant drops slowly erode the skin, forming blisters that worsen with each drip. The pain intensifies, adding to the mental anguish. Number 8. The boat method. In this version, 2 boats were joined together to form a floating coffin. The victim would be placed inside, with only their face visible and limbs hanging out. Initially, it might seem manageable, like breaking a rule at Disney, but it quickly escalated. The victim would be force-fed large amounts of milk and honey, attracting insects and animals. Over time, fecal matter would accumulate, drawing rats and worms that would burrow into the victim's body, eating them alive. This torture could last for days, with recorded instances of victims surviving for up to 17 days in excruciating pain before succumbing to infections and the relentless assault of insects and vermin. Number 7. Molten gold death. If you pour hot liquid gold down someone's throat, it might look like something from a TV show, like when someone was given a golden crown in Game of Thrones. Although this story seems like it was made up, people have died in such horrible ways in the past. It would hurt a lot to die from this act, but it would happen fast. The hot gold would damage organs, causing shock and problems with the lungs that would almost immediately kill the person. People would die even if they lived for about 10 seconds, because the gold would harden and block their lungs, killing them even more. That's a scary example of how far people will go to hurt others. Number 6. Swedish drink. Back during the 30-Year War from 1618 to 1648 in Europe, Swedish mercenaries would use this on German villagers during raids to make them spill the beans about where their valuables were hidden. Now, what was this drink? Well, it's pretty nasty. Imagine mixing human or animal poop and pee together in a bucket. Yup, that's it. Victims would be held down and made to gulp this awful stuff. And, as if that wasn't bad enough, some of these mercenaries were real sadists. They'd wait until the poor victims' stomachs were all bloated from drinking this filth, and then they'd start pushing on their bellies with sticks or even walking on them with wooden boards. Number 5. The cangue. In the past, when people made mistakes and were caught by the authorities, they faced public shame in different ways. In Europe, thieves might have been branded with the letter T on their faces to show their wrongdoing. Similarly, in China, a punishment called the cangue was used. This involved wearing a heavy wooden board around the neck, which displayed the person's crime for all to see. It was impossible to hide in public with such a visible punishment. For smaller offenses, the person might only have to wear the cangue for a short period, during which kind-hearted individuals might offer them food and water. However, it was difficult to eat or drink with the large board blocking their hands. If no one helped them, they faced a slow and shameful death. These punishments served as deterrents to others and were a reminder of the consequences of breaking the law. Number 4. The Judas cradle. During the Middle Ages in Europe, authorities possessed frightening torture devices, including some that were never employed, such as the Iron Maiden adorned with spikes. Others, like the head crusher, remain uncertain in terms of historical usage, leading to debates among historians. Among these devices is the Judas cradle, described as a pyramid-shaped chair top that purportedly inflicted severe internal injuries on its victims. While museums exhibit these instruments of torture, there exists a dearth of solid evidence confirming their actual use. Although attributed to 16th century Spain, there is no definitive proof supporting this claim. Victims subjected to the Judas cradle endured immense suffering, facing risks of maiming, infection, and even death. Number 3. Kneehauling. This was a brutal punishment used on sailors who stole or were violent at sea, often resulting in death. The process began by tying the sailor's arms with rope, looping it around the ship, and tying it to their feet. Then, the sailor was thrown overboard and dragged along the ship's exterior, including over the keel, hence the name. Many sailors didn't survive this ordeal, succumbing to drowning, broken backs and necks, or being sliced by sharp barnacles. If a sailor miraculously survived, they faced 3 outcomes. They'd either undergo another round and likely die, suffer from infections, and slowly perish, or live with scars and mockery for the rest of their days. Number 2. Flaying. This was perhaps the most painful of all ancient world execution methods because of its slow process. The victim was first stripped and their hands and feet bound to stop any movement. After this, the executioner would begin peeling away the individual's skin with a sharp blade, often starting with the head, legs, or buttocks, as these areas would inflict the most suffering due to the victim still being conscious. In some instances, parts of the person's body were even boiled to make the skin softer and easier to remove. There were a few ways one could die from flaying: shock, blood or fluid loss, hypothermia, or an infection. The time of death could also be anywhere from a few hours to a few days. This method was used by different countries. However, people no longer use it. Number 1. White torture. Solitary confinement is a harsh punishment where someone is kept alone, away from others and things that bring comfort. In normal isolation, there's at least some room to move around, but white torture takes it a step further. It locks people in a cell that's completely stripped of color and any familiar features. The walls, floor, and ceiling are all pure white, just like the prisoner's clothes and the food they're given, which is usually bland and colorless, like rice or porridge. The cell is made to block out any shadows with bright lights and to keep out all outside noise, leaving only the person's thoughts. This extreme form of sensory deprivation has been used in different countries, such as Iran and Venezuela, especially against people who speak out against the government or are accused of terrorism. That's all for now. I hope you have enjoyed watching the video. Don't forget to like and share the video and follow us for more amazing content. Thanks for watching till the end.